Okay, in this video, we're going to turn from the allotropic and isotropic structure of atoms, which is really the chemistry level of atoms, and here we're going to go down into the subatomic or the internal levels of the proton, which is more in the domain of the physics of atomic structure. But of course, then we're going to level jump and we're going to take what we learn here and we're going to bring it up from the very, very small quantum mechanical levels. We're going to bring it up to larger levels of existence, including our human level, and having it help guide us in what we are going to be developing into. So we're really going to get a whole new look at a human being, at how we humans work, and then at what we are a part of. So let's start here. This is the basic proton that we've been studying in the last few videos. And so now with this image, what the one with the green in it there, it's the same image as the proton. You can see one thing I'll be referring to in this video. Look at the 3 red full color Mox cards. They point to us, the viewers, left, but you have to look at a proton as though you're looking at a person's face. So I would call that red arrow right. It's as though it is, it's pointing towards the right side of the face of the proton, if you were to think of it that way, or the right side from the proton's perspective. And so if you look at the one that is slightly angled there, that one is also red arrow right. It's also a standing proton. So it's basically the same thing. And what we want to do, we want to go down inside of the proton. And so how do we do that? Well, it's sort of like we're just taking another version of the proton and shrinking it down the way I show right here, which you can see in the proton core, the nucleus. You just have another smaller level proton. But there's one thing that you can see there that is different, is the proton has to turn. It's no longer a standing proton, but it has to turn 90 degrees to fit into the core. And this, you remember in the theory of everything, we were talking about how magnetism turns at each level by 90 degrees. And so even though it's a lot smaller right there, you can see it goes from the outer level where you have red arrow right, it is now going and turning so that it goes red arrow up at the inner level. And so we're using this, the one with the green in it now in this image. This is the way, you can't really go any deeper than just that one proton there when you just shrink it down like that. So we're going to be doing the same thing, but in a different way. So here, this is 2 ways of looking at the same proton with an inner level. You can see I put a tan-colored hexagon around the gold proton core, and that's sort of showing that it has this deeper level. I think actually when you have a black dot for any proton, what that black dot means is that it has an inner level. It has a nucleus to it. So, but the tan just helps to see it as we're setting it up here. So this is just 2 different ways of looking at the same thing, but we can't really go much further with the part on the right, but we're going to continue to go further down with the one on the left. And so we have that red arrow right, and then we go to red arrow down. And so it just makes sense. We know the next one has to turn. And so we're really just using common sense here, and we put it in so that it is now red arrow to its left. In other words, you could say the first one is at 9 o'clock, and then it goes down to 6 o'clock, and then it goes over to 3 o'clock. So it seems like we are doing this counterclockwise. And that is the case because to show, I sort of need to start with the outer proton and show you this thing going down. But for heterosexual men, the concept is that you really are building upwards. We're just looking, we're setting this up sort of backwards in a sense, because it just has to, you kind of have to do it that way. It doesn't make much sense setting it up the other way, but the idea is to have it so that it's going from the smallest level spinning up in the chiral spin. You want it to be clockwise coming up from the smallest level. So anyway, the fourth one then just makes, the most sense. You keep going around, and it now has red arrow up. So it's gone. So you started at 9 o'clock, went to 6 o'clock, went to 3 o'clock. Now you're going up to 12 o'clock with the red arrow. And then when you put the fifth one in place, you now see that you really have a closed system. It's back to being red arrow right for the thing. And so this would be like the smallest level. And if you're looking from its perspective, working its way up through nature, it would be spinning up in a clockwise fashion, which would be, chiral spin, heterosexual male going up. Okay, so these are the 5 levels of a proton, and I think the physicists should do the official names, but you know how the physicists say, okay, you have the electron, which is a negative energy ring, and it's out around the nucleus. And so you look at what I have here as the outer proton. Well, that's a negative energy level. So each of the green ones here, the ones with the dark green color, they are going to be negative energy levels. Then the physicists say the proton itself is positive energy. So that second one is what I call the nuclear level, and it has positive energy. Inside of it, you have the quark level, and the 3 quarks work off of asymptotic freedom. And so they're sort of holding each other to some extent, but they're pushing away from each other. You could call that, there are always 3 separate quarks. And so you call that a negative level. Then you have the gluon level. Gluons hold the quarks together. They hold everything in place. So that's another positive energy level. And then I have the neutrino as the smallest level. Now, remember we've said, or at least I'm saying here, gluons are sort of like protons, which are sort of like glial cells, which are sort of like human beings. And neutrinos are sort of like neutrons, which are then sort of like neurons, which are then sort of like our computers. But aren't we humans and our computers at the same level? Well, certainly we humans use our computers at the same level, but think how fast they operate. I mean, this is the whole thing where AI is such a miracle. You can ask questions that would take, lots of research and time and effort going through huge amounts of data. And so I think our computers might be we humans may be at sort of a second level, and our computers tie in with a smaller level, because we humans really tie in with the cellular level of life. Our brains operate, and so much of our thinking and all of the stuff going on in us is sort of operating at a cellular level. Computers really don't have a cellular level of structure. They are operating directly at atomic time speeds. They're using using direct electrical energy running between all of the components, which are made up of atoms and stuff. So the physicists are going to have to talk about this. First, do they agree with the levels that I've chosen here, and it's a big thing to say neutrinos and gluons are at a different level, and does that tie in with humans and computers being at 2 different levels? So that's a first thing. I'm going to get to more of what I mean about the positive and negative in a minute, but first look at this diagram. So forget the way these things are spinning and stuff. It's an old diagram, but what this 5-level system explains, one of the things it explains is the different frequency levels of electromagnetic radiation. You can see the largest one are the radio waves. That's the one sort of coming from the outer side. It's not even coming from a nucleus. I mean, it would be a nucleus to some larger level. And then you have the infrared level of light coming from the second level. Visible light is the middle of the thing. That's where humans would sort of be overall in some conceptual dynamics. Then you have ultraviolet. X-rays are coming from the smallest level, but gamma rays, the final level, they are coming up through the nucleus. So they really are representing, energy coming from a whole nother smaller level, 5-level system. And they are the highest energy and the smallest and tightest of the beams. Okay, so now in this one, I fill in the next larger level of existence. And this really, what you're looking at here is a human being. This is a new way of seeing a human being. And you have the outer human, and this is a negative energy level. And so what I mean by negative energy here is the negative levels form things into separate entities. The way every human being is absolutely separate from every other human being, no matter what. We are independent, individual human beings. And then you go to the cellular level, the middle level, and every cell is completely independent and separate. They're all attached into, tissues and all sorts of stuff, but they are definitely separate entities. And then it's the same thing with the atoms. Atoms are entirely, totally separate entities. But so think about, we've never really quite looked or thought about it this way, but look at the organ level. What it really is it's a positive energy level. It has two negative energy levels where humans are separating into individual things, and then our cells are all separating into individual things. And our organ level is a positive energy level because what it is doing is transmitting energies, materials, waste products in between the cellular level of life and our outer level. And the organelle level is then doing that between cells and atoms. So if you, with your outer self, if you eat a hamburger, your organ level is going to use its positive energy to take the hamburger and distribute a bunch of mini hamburgers to all the cells that want one throughout the body. And then when all the cells have the mini hamburgers, now the organelle level is going to break those down and distribute micro hamburgers to all the atoms that want one. So it's kind of this is a really new and interesting way of seeing and thinking about we humans. We are made up of 3 negative levels connected by 2 positive energy levels. So the next thing then that this really explains is it explains sleep. This is just very similar to the explanation we just gave with electromagnetic radiation. But you can say that the outer level is like being wide awake. If the outer level is dominant, if it is the one dominating the whole 5-level system, then you're wide awake. And you're wide awake for about 2/3 of the time, about 16 out of the 24 hours. So if we assume, remember the inner ones spin at what are technically slower, but then counterintuitively things move much faster inside. So if there's about 8 hours left, and at your second level, this would be your organ level. When you sleep at night, your organs have to sort of come together, like politically or dynamically, and work out all their issues and their problems. They have to solve things to keep the organs healthy. And so imagine that about 5 out of your 8 hours is the slow wave sleep, which is your organs just getting themselves situated and solving problems, and maybe their inner inner Russia is attacking their inner Ukraine and they have to solve that or some kind of problem like that, so that's what your slow wave sleep is. I think I may have, again, the sleep scientists I may have the stuff wrong, but the middle one would obviously be the REM sleep. And so this would be about, you have about 3 hours left. And so if this takes about 2/3 of that, about 2 hours a night would be REM sleep, which is just your inner civilization. Your brain is saying we have to get ourselves situated, all of our cells in the brain and connecting out to all the cells in the body. So it's turning off your outer self so that it's sort of locking you into a paralysis, and it's focusing on its own issues at the cellular level. And then you would have the fourth level would be the organelle level. That might be a faster wave or something. Things as you go down here, this would only be probably about 40 minutes, 2/3 of the 1 hour that's left, so about 40 minutes. And this might, it's not going to do it all at once. Your organelle level may take breaks all during the day, and they may somehow get washed in together into a certain kind of sleep stage when you're asleep at night or something. But I mean, it's hard, again, it'll take study, but the final level, the atomic level, things happen so quickly there. The time is so slow that they move so quickly that, I mean, if they have 20 minutes a night, that could be years and years of atomic time that they have to sort out their issues and sort out their problems. And, they may, it may be something like out of every minute, the atomic level may take 5 seconds a minute or something to reboot themselves. And then that all comes together as some part of your sleep at night, or I'm not quite sure how all that would work. So these are basically just different ways to look at and think about this 5-level system and what it's doing, how, proofs of how it works. But so now in this next diagram, this is the reason I really needed to show you this 5-level system, is because you need to understand this for us to begin to look at what is it that we're building as a greater living human. And so here, look at the what I have on top of the diagram now. The human level, we are the smallest part, and then the Earth level, the planet Earth, would be the middle level, because planets and moons are all completely separate objects. They're definitely separate, so it's a negative level. And then our solar system is separate from other solar systems, so it's the largest negative level. And now, so here's just another big kind of epiphany. Think about the organelle level. What do corporations do? They take the bounty, the energies of the earth, and they figure out a way to spread them out to all the human beings. So our industrial or corporate levels, it's a positive energy level. Now, don't get that confused with right now corporations are doing too much to do everything for corporations and not for humans. And as we humans come online here, we need to we're not building our greater living self for the organ or organelle levels. We're building them for the human and earth and solar and, so positive is a energy dynamic. It doesn't mean good necessarily here. I mean, it doesn't mean bad either, but you get what I'm saying. Anyway, so the next thing this is telling us that is incredibly important is, think about climate change. On the corporate level, the organelle level, it can't deal with climate change, and governments and stuff. We're going to have a new level going between the Earth and the solar system, which is this greater genetic level, and it's going to be like a greater corporate level. And we're going to have special financial stuff, and it's going to basically build greater genes, which go out and do a lot of the processing of things that make the whole system able to exist at the whole large 5-level system. Okay, so I took the the physics structure off from the bottom here. And in this one, you're just looking, so this is going to become a very familiar image for us as we start to build both come to greater understanding about how we humans work, but then are using this very simple diagram to begin trying to understand what it is we're growing into. But now there's another, the plot thickens, as they would say. Look here at the neutron structure. It also forms a basic 5-level system that matches the protons 5 levels. What I do here, I add outside coloring to it just because it's much easier. It's hard to see as it turns or twists. It's just a much more complicated thing than the protons sort of to follow in these 5-level diagrams. And so you see it more clearly. Also, if you look at the neutron, the separate one by itself, it also is standing in its outer form, but then needs to turn on its side at the next level. Only there happens to be an amazing complication right here. So look at this diagram. When you take the neutron and you try to do the 5-level system with it, it turns out it has all these sub-levels. I always start with the color red. So look at the red there. It doesn't need to turn all the way 90 degrees. It can turn partially with a flat form and then another standing form where it's now at the side that's not quite 90 degrees yet. And then it's finally under the organelle level proton there. It's finally a full 90 degrees. So what this is saying is neutrons bring a whole lot of substructural stuff. The protons, as we looked in the last couple Moxlogic things at allotropic and isotopic structure of atoms, we really saw that protons set up the structure and then the neutrons sort of fit in and around the protons in the nucleus. And here we see the protons really build this 5-level structure going down inside as well. So they're not just horizontally the main structural component, they are like vertically going up and down through the gauge variant time, size, speed levels. They are also the structural component. And once again, the neutrons sort of fit in around the proton structure. But so look at that organelle level one, the lower tan level one. Okay, so we said that's the corporate level. So think directly of the neutron underneath that. Let's say that one is the entire banking industry, like not individual banks, but all the banks together as one bank. That would be like that neutron would be the whole industry of banking if we're just taking one thing from the corporate world. Then the next one, smaller, that might be the individual corporate banks. So now you've got Citibank and Wells Fargo and Bank America and that sort of stuff. Then the next one down, the second smallest one, that might be regional banks where, Citibank or something breaks itself up at a smaller level into maybe 5 or 10 different regional things for the different regions of America. So that would be another level of sort of a sub-level of structure. And then the final neutron underneath the smallest proton there would be like your individual drive-through bank where you go once a week or so and do your personal banking. So the neutron is take the human cardiovascular system where you have huge, large veins and arteries, and think about our interstate highways here in America. And then you've got smaller highways and you've got smaller veins and things, and you go on down to ultimately you've got the tiny little capillaries, which are like the little small roads that we live on, just one little car at a time or something. So neutrons bring all this sub-level of structure to the system. Okay, so now let me show you this last 5-level diagram that's a little bit more complex. So we know now that we are parts of these 5-level systems, that nature makes up a 5-level system. It makes it up for atoms. It makes it up for humans. We're going to build one for our greater self. And that's how you build a living system. But now this is another order of multidimensionality that you see in this diagram. And what this is focusing on is that we really are a part of not just one of these 5-level systems, but at the same time, we are a part of three, at least these three different multi-5-level systems. And so look on the top one here is where you have an outer human, and this is the one we've really been looking at with our cellular level brains in the middle. And by the way, I forgot to mention, when you look at the red arrow, how it turns upside down in the middle level, our brains see visual information upside down. Our brains basically operate upside down from our outer level. So again, there's a whole lot to talk about there. I mean, that's a huge thing. You could say that, gravity-wise, but there's internal gravity, of course. But basically, if we have this inner civilization that is operating upside down, so the middle level, the brain is upside down. But anyway, focusing back in on this diagram, so you get the top level one, and that's where we humans are the outermost level, and we have all this life inside of us, which is, trillions of cells in our whole body system, and then trillions of atoms inside each cell. So, I mean, there's a lot going on inside of us. And then we are also parts of our new solar level of life, where we humans, our computers and everything, are like the brain system. So we're like the cells to our outer computer, or to our outer solar level of life. And so this is sort of saying at the solar level, the solar level does not even really think about atoms. It's thinking of the cellular level of life as its most fundamental level. And then this is also saying on the bottom, we humans are like atoms. We're going to build into a solar level of life, but then that's only part of a galactic level. So as we fill out into the solar system after the millennial age, the 1,000, 1,200 years, something like that, we're going to be born into a whole new greater living reality with sensory input, and we're going to see a whole new reality on a greater planet in our mother's arms and everything. But at the same time, we humans are going to start going out in spaceships and stuff and beginning to bring the entire Milky Way galaxy to life. Or there may already be a lot of aliens out there, and it may already be alive, and we don't quite know what to expect yet. But we are going to be a smallest level part of our whole greater Milky Way galaxy as a living 5-level system. Okay, so we've looked at a lot of stuff about atoms in these 3 Moxlogic videos. And this here is showing a bunch of H2O molecules locked together to form the beginning of some ice or a snowflake. And one last thing we have to look at, though, in these 4 Moxlogic video series here is why, for example, why do these oxygen atoms that we're looking at right here, why do they want and need to bond with the 2 hydrogen atoms each? I mean, we know it's so that oxygen can add 2 electrons and get to the neon gas valence structure, the valence shell level, that neon has 10 electrons, and so it becomes sort of stable. It doesn't want or need anything once it gets to that 10. And so the oxygen is trying to add 2 electrons to get to that 10, and then it's at rest. So we know that from chemistry, but everything we've covered here, nothing has told us or shown us why that is or how that works or what's even going on with that. So the actual answer to that comes from a whole nother new logical system, something related to the Moxlogic system but different, and something which explains the valence shell structure of atoms. So what we've looked at so far has told us a lot about what's going on down in the nucleus of atoms and about the energy fields, which the nucleus extends way out around themselves. But in the next video, we're going to look at the structure for electrons and that lock on around the outside of these protons and neutron energy fields. And they have a whole different structure, so we're going to look at that next. And just by the way, when these oxygens are in a high enough temperature level or a high enough surrounding energy level, they only hold on to the 2 hydrogens each, so then they form liquid water. But when the surrounding energy drops low enough, when the temperature gets cold enough, then the little bit of neutron magnetic energy, remember we said how it goes out past the 3 levels. So if it goes out into the 4th level, if an atom has the neutrons 3 levels from the edge, it's putting bonding energy out that, well, this is how I knew it goes a little bit further than the 4, because if the energy drops enough, then it becomes, the little bit of energy becomes stronger than the amount of external energy, which is sort of shaking things around all the time. And so they can grab onto each other, and then that's when they form ice. So you just have a little bit of extra energy going over the bottoms of the oxygen atoms, that when the external energy is low enough, they lock into place. Okay, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.